Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm back with another edition of Who's a Savage Now. I tried to kick my habit. I tried to kick my KPFK habit, but I wasn't.
One of the great challenges in this world.
I was unsuccessful. Jesus. I was unsuccessful kicking my KPFK habit and got into a little email tiff. Well, Sonali Kolhatkar is a journalist. Well, I wouldn't say a journalist. She's a host of a radio show. She's a broadcast journalist, allegedly. And she's been at KPFK for almost 20 years. But I don't appreciate her reporting. I don't appreciate her reporting at all. She was a Russiagator. Her stories are barely left of NPR, MSNBC, barely left, especially on her medical reporting on vaccines. And so it's actually identical to the NPR reporting on vaccines. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. My journey from astrophysicist to radio host. I never knew she was an astrophysicist, but this is kind of interesting. But let's look at this, the origin story of Sonali. How did she come to KPFK? I suspect KPFK hosts are taking underwriting money without disclosing it, and that's not whether it may be criminal, but more than that, it's immoral, because you're pledging to people, you're bleeding the listeners dry for $5, $10, $20, $50, $100 donations to pay the bills. Meanwhile, you're taking money from who knows who that you don't have to disclose, that nobody's going to call you on, that you will never be held accountable for, to push an idea, an agenda, a certain news story. It's disgusting. But let's see how Sonali came to KPFK. Let's see. She claims to be a journalist. She claims to be dedicated, an independent journalist. Okay, she claims to be dedicated to the truth. But let's delve into her origin story in her own words. Okay, how she came to KPFK, and see, and you be the judge about whether it adds up, whether it makes sense, whether it sounds believable.
Job at our local radio station, community radio station. Struck the United States. Okay, and so nobody understood what was really happening in Afghanistan at the time. To understand why those attacks had happened, they hadn't been paying attention to Afghanistan before 9/11. So I began getting a lot of speaking invitations. I was asked to speak at community forums and on panels and in colleges.
Just out of the blue, she was asked to speak at panels and colleges. She was an astrophysicist working at a research center. She quit that job. She started looking into the women, and she started getting into the women in Afghanistan story. This is her rise to fame. Greg Palast poll votes over the poll votes over with the voting irregularities, voter fraud. And Sonali, this was her issue. Abby Martin does the Middle East, Palestine, and this is Sonali's profit center, Afghan women. Let's start a 501c3 for Afghan women. Okay. And then, so she started looking into that, and then what happened, Sonali?
Understand why those attacks had happened. They hadn't been paying attention to Afghanistan before 9/11. So I began getting a lot of speaking invitations. I was asked to speak at community forums.
Based on what? Were you writing articles? Where's your early writing on Afghanistan after 9/11? I don't think it exists. Your only listed publications are in truthdig.org and Salon and LA Times. I mean, you started out at the top, Sonali. Where did you what do they say? Where did you earn your stripes as a journalist? Where did you earn your stripes as a journalist?
On panels and in colleges. I got a lot of media interviews, and it was at...
You did a lot of media interviews. People were seeking out Sonali Kolhatkar's opinion on Afghanistan. With based on what? Based on what? I don't believe this story. I don't believe this story. She's a journalist. She claims to be...
Began getting a lot of speaking invitations. I was
Began getting a lot of speaking invitations. Based on what?
Speak at community forums and on panels and in colleges.
What community forums? The North Hollywood community? Did you speak at a North Hollywood community forum where your station is located? Did you ever speak at one of those forums? Are you involved in the community of where your radio station is located in North Hollywood? I don't think you are, Sonali. I don't think you are. What communities were you speaking in?
Got a lot of media interviews, and it was at...
Got a lot of media interviews. I don't buy this shit. I don't buy this shit at all.
It was also a terrible time for the women of Rawa who... Okay, and so nobody understood what was really happening in Afghanistan at the time to understand why
nobody understand what was happening except Sonali.
Those attacks had happened.
Yeah, why did those attacks happen on 9/11? It was the hijackers from Pakistan, right? Right. Okay.
Paying attention to Afghanistan before 9/11. So I began getting a lot of speaking invitations. I was asked to speak at community forums and on panels and in colleges. I got a lot of media interviews, and it was at...
Based on what? What were these invitations based on, Sonali? It's my theory that somebody came up and tapped Sonali on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be a spokesman on the left for us, and we're going to pay you. You're going to get paid. Don't worry about it. But we'd like you to be our gal in the left media." What do you say? Oh, okay. I mean, she just came out of nowhere. Just listen to this. Listen to her story.
The Twin Towers and the Pentagon were struck in one of the worst terrorist attacks in U.S. history. And while it was a terrible time for the country,
it was a... She's feeding us the government line on 911, claiming to be an independent journalist. But this is exactly what they tell you on CNN and MSNBC and all the mainstream media. It was a terrorist attack. My journey to radio host. Look how serious she is. Calm down. Take it easy, Sonali.
And then the Twin Towers and the Pentagon were struck in one of the worst terrorist attacks in U.S. history. And while it was a terrible time for the country, it was also a terrible time for the women of Rawa who realized that the same forces they had been fighting against had now struck the United States.
Is that Rawa, R-A-W-A, Rawa? What is she talking about? I have no idea. The same women of Rawa had now struck the United States. She knows who...
Terrible time for the country. it was also a terrible time for the women of Rawa, who realized that the same forces they had been fighting against had now struck the United States. Okay, and so nobody.
No, it's not okay. I don't buy that. I don't buy your premise here. That these people struck the United States. I don't buy that, Sonali. Holy shit.
Understood what was really happening in Afghanistan at the time to understand why those.
Yes, yes. It takes an American citizen to understand what's really happening 10,000 miles away in a foreign land. Okay, that's who understands. A privileged American female is the only one who knows what's happening and understands what's happening 10,000 miles away, not 10 miles down the street where people are living in cardboard boxes and tents. No, that's the problem. We don't need to worry about that. What we need to worry about is people 10,000 miles away, the women 10,000 miles away. That's what we need to worry about and focus on here. That's why I got into journalism.
The women of Rawa, who realized that the same forces they had been fighting.
Not because of what's happening in America, not because of the injustices, the racial, economic injustices in America, but because women were being abused in Afghanistan. That's what got me into journalism.
Had now struck the United States. Okay, and so nobody understood what was really happening in Afghanistan at the time to understand.
Except you, Sonali.
Why those attacks had happened. They hadn't been paying attention to Afghanistan before 9/11. So I began getting.
Who's they? Who's they, Sonali? Who is they? Who's they?
Understand why those attacks had happened. They hadn't been paying attention to Afghanistan before 9/11. So I began getting.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Okay. She's a horrible journalist. None of this, her facts, she just speaks without any references to anything.
Speaking invitations.
Has she referenced any articles or surveys or stories? Has she referenced one other journalist in her speech here? No, she's just talking off the top of her head.
So nobody understood what was really happening in Afghanistan at the time to understand why those.
She's got this huge screen behind her. She could put up articles and reports and stories to support her story. Does she put up anything to support what she's saying? No, nothing. Nada, zilch. That's not a journalist.
Had happened. They hadn't been paying attention to Afghanistan before 9/11. So I began getting a lot of speaking invitations.
So all of a sudden she starts getting speaking invitations. Really? From who?
Those attacks had
based
happened.
On what?
They hadn't been paying attention to Afghanistan.
Based on what?
Before 9/11. So I began getting a lot of speaking invitations. I was asked to speak at community forums and on panels and in colleges. I got a lot of media interviews, and it was.
You got a lot of media interviews, really? Where are those interviews? Can you reference any of those? I'd really like to see some of those interviews and your insights, your journalistic insights, Sonali, before you were a journalist.
One interview or one event where I was.
Okay. Was it an interview or an event, Sonali? Was it I'm confused. Was it an interview or an event?
I got a lot of media interviews, and it was at one.
Got a lot of media interviews. No, you don't want to specify which media? Just media, a lot of media interviews. Okay.
Interview or one event where I was.
Yes, it wasn't an interview, it was an event. Let's get it straight.
That a friend of mine approached me. She'd just seen me speak, and she said, Sonali, you should be on the radio. You.
With a voice like that, you should be on the freaking radio, Sonali. Was this friend like special needs?
interview or one event where I was speaking that a friend of mine approached me. She'd just seen me speak, and she said, Sonali, you should be on the radio.
Was this friend like deaf by any chance?
Should get a job at our local radio.
Oh, you should get a job at our local radio station, 90.7 FM Pacifica. Now, who was this friend? Here's the other thing. How do people get shows on KPFK? It's a very obscure, nebulous process. Nobody understands how people. The programming hasn't changed in 20 years, hardly ever. They move shows around, change the times. They bring on one or two different people, but the programming has remained essentially the same for the last 20 years. Okay, but here's Sonali. She's gonna quit her research job and become a radio broadcaster.
Community radio station KPFK, where I was speaking that a friend of mine approached me. She'd just seen me speak, and she said, Sonali, you should be on the radio. You should get a job at our local radio station, community radio station KPFK.
Who was this person? Was this Grace Aaron? Was this Ken Aaron? Was this Jan Goodman? Somebody was that one of these people that have been around KPFK forever? Is this one of the influencers at KPFK that tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you know what? You might fit right in over here, sister."
I thought she was joking.
She was probably joking, Sonali.
Remember laughing slightly hysterically at the notion of me on the radio.
I'm still laughing hysterically at you on the radio. Oh, God. No training, no education in broadcasting or journalism or political science or anything.
I thought she was joking. I even remember laughing slightly hysterically at the notion of me on the radio.
Slightly hysterically.
But she planted a seed.
What a command of the language she has.
I was still working at Caltech. I was still spending 8 hours a day writing code, and so much was going on in the world at the time, and I felt that I needed to be doing more. So I did something that only a young person with no kids.
Okay, so just because somebody mentioned she should be on the radio, and she's going to do what?
Who doesn't have much debt and who's living during a boom rather than a recession has the luxury of doing, I quit my job.
She just quit her job. I quit. Went in one day, said, I'm giving all this up. I just spent all this time, energy, and money getting a master's degree in astrophysics, but you know what? I've had it with you guys. Somebody told me I should be on the radio. I'm going to follow my dream.
My job at Caltech, and I showed up at KPFK, resume in hand, and asked them to hire me to do a job that I had never done before.
Sure, come on in. It's KPFK. You don't have to know what the F you're doing. You come on in. Say, yeah, hell yeah. Hell yes. Hell yes. Come on in. Yes. We say yes. Hey, we've got an opening for you.
Quit my job. I quit my job at Caltech, and
it just so happens we got an opening.
At KPFK, resume in hand, and asked them to hire me to do a job that I had never done before. All right, well,
yeah, don't start out answering phones or doing, clerical work or grassroots community organizing in the community where the radio station is or reaching out to local communities. No, we're going to give you a mic. We're going to put you you're going straight to the studio.
So right place and right time happened to be smiling down upon me, and they asked me to try out for their morning show because their host was about to leave with very little notice.
They were about to fire somebody with very little notice. And so now I just happened to be tapping on the door. Hey, here's my resume.
out. They liked me. I stayed, and it's been 12 years that I have been a broadcast journalist at a community radio station, and actually soon to be cable television.
And you've been stuck in year one of broadcasting talent and on-air talent, on-air skill, on-air broadcasting talent. You've been stuck in the first year. You haven't progressed one iota, Sonali. Horrible. You're a horrible broadcaster. Just from a sound, audio, production quality point of view, it's horrible. It's unlistenable.
Being a journalist allows me to.
Oh, now she's a journalist. Now she's a journalist. You mean broadcast journalist, Sonali? Where's your writing? All of a sudden, she's a host at KPFK. She gets published in Truth Dig, LA Times, Salon.
Explore solutions to problems.
Abracadabra. Abracadabra. It wasn't organic. It wasn't organic. Okay, that's the problem here. It wasn't organic. It just happened overnight. Overnight, Sonali's got a show on a major station in Los Angeles, California. Overnight. No training, no formal education.
Allows me to shine a light on issues that affect our community. It allows me to.
What community? What community are you shining a light on, Sonali? What community? What community within the signal area of your radio station are you shining a light on? Please inform me. Please let me know, because I will support that. I will be the first one to write a check to KPFK if you are highlighting one issue, one struggle, one cause in the station's signal area.
Expose corporate malfeasance and to highlight political doublespeak. You know, I believe that the role of a journalist is to comfort the
Wow, that's really cutting edge.
and afflict the comfortable. And in this work, I found meaning. In this work, I found meaning. So today,
And a paycheck.
I work a lot harder than I did when I was at Caltech. I don't even get paid as much as I did when I was at Caltech. And now I have 2 kids, so I actually need that money so much more than when I worked at Caltech. I have little free time. I have very little disposable income. Am I happy? Honestly, most days, I'm depressed. I'm depressed about the state of the world. I'm depressed because...
Wait a minute. This is getting too dark. This is getting too dark. Okay, my journey from Master Sonali. She's all of a sudden. I looked for. She's just all of a sudden. She's a Truth Dig contributor. Sonali Kolhatkar is a columnist for Truth Dig. But where was she a columnist prior to Truth Dig? All of a sudden, she's a columnist for Truth Dig. You know, just abracadabra. Columnist, she's a founder, host, blah, 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 Rising, Free Speech TV, Pacifica Stations, and affiliates. She is the founder and foremost of Public Money Shop. She's a co-director of the Afghan Women's Mission. She is also co-director of the Afghan Women's Mission, a U.S.-based nonprofit solidarity, a 501c3 that funds the social, political, and humanitarian projects of WRAWA. So you get your. Well, this is how you do it. You get yourself a little 501c3 based on something 10,000 miles away, not something down the street, like homelessness. You know, not something in your neighborhood, in your community, but something in 10,000 miles away community. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that thing. Okay, and we'll raise money and we'll fund the projects of this and who knows who else. What else? It's just very sketchy. Man. It's sketchy. It's freaking sketchy. I searched Sonali Kolhatkar. Sonali Kolhatkar published writings. Published writings. Where did she start out? Where did she earn her bones, so to speak? Seven Stories Press. Where's the early work of Sonali? Washington and James, forward by David Barsamian. Okay. Leading. Okay. She wrote a book. So is a host and producer of Uprising, Daily okay, Truth Dig, and a contributing columnist at Truth Dig and Alternet. She's also the co-director with Jane Mingles of the Afghan Women's Mission, a U.S.-based nonprofit that raises funds for the project of the Revolutionary Association of Women of Afghanistan. She lives in Southern California. So this is textbook, left, how you become a personality in left politics broadcasting. But where's her? How did this? It doesn't make sense. There's no organic beginning to her. All of a sudden, she's just a Truth Dig columnist. She wasn't a columnist at like the LA Weekly. She didn't start out the LA Weekly or like, a community newspaper or a community this or that. There's nothing. All of a sudden, she just leaped in to this host of at KPFK, and then all of a sudden she's a published author at Truth Dig. I mean, if you believe it, that's fine. I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. It's just weird. She's not that intelligent, really. Astrophysicist, master's, not PhD. Maybe she's really good at something, but I don't buy it. And that's that. Questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, confessions, compliments, complaints, leave them. You know where you can put them. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're watching this. And have a blessed day and be grateful. MZ out.